Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to my review for Lee Daniels' The Butler, which is a movie. That's it. No, it's a movie inspired by a true story, which I don't know really what that means. I'm guessing it's inspired by a guy that was black, that worked in the White House as a butler for a very long time, and he had a family. I don't know how true this story is, but it's definitely part true. So, what did I think of The Butler, the movie that beat out Kick-Ass 2 in box office and critical reception-wise? What did I think of it? Well, let's talk about the story. The story for The Butler follows the titular butler himself, Cecil Gaines, played by Forrest Whitaker, who had a terrible, terrible past. He saw his father get shot. He had to leave his mother behind because he used to be a slave, and when he was a free man, he had to leave his mother behind. So he had a real bad time when he was a kid, but nowadays he actually has a pretty decent life. He's married to Oprah Winfrey's character. He has 2 kids, one played by David Oyelowo, I guess, and he has a decent life. He works at a restaurant, a high-end restaurant, as a waiter, and he's great at his job. And because he's so great, someone from the White House goes to that restaurant and notices that he is really good at his job. So they want him to work in the White House. So from there on, it's pretty much watching this guy just be a butler in the White House for like 20, maybe 27 years, I think, 28 years of his life, and pretty much watching all these presidents come and go, all this racism happen, because of course he's black, if you didn't know Forrest Whitaker was black, and the Civil Rights Movement, of course, and Vietnam, and dealing with his actual kids and stuff, especially David Oyelowo, I think I'm saying his name right, and dealing with his son, who is a part of the Civil Rights Movement, and just all that stuff. You know, it's a movie about this guy, but mostly it's about him and his family, not just him, which was a little disappointing. I wanted it to be mostly about him, but it's really not just about him. It's about everybody in his family, which isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but I was looking forward to this movie because I thought it was going to be about mainly the butler. That's why it's called The Butler. But not really. So, anyway, the story here is damn good, though. The writing is very good in this film, even though I have to say, at times it gets a little bit too schmaltzy, especially with the soundtrack, which was very similar to some, like, Jobs that I just reviewed, but that movie was not very sad, never felt it. Here, it was sad. It was actually very sad. So it did work at times, unlike Jobs where it never worked. Here it did work at times with the music, but when the writing was starting to get cheesy and then the music started to come up, those two mixing, not so good. Those parts kind of dragged and made me go, okay, this is kind of corny. But then it goes to something else, and then the writing's very good, and you do feel something. I really like that this movie balances out all of these different characters, and the presidents, of course, who are not characters, they're real people, and of course the 2 big subject matters, the one huge one that's very apparent in this film, Civil Rights Movement, and Vietnam. But Vietnam's not as big as the Civil Rights Movement in this, but it definitely has a big part to play. But the Civil Rights Movement, even though I have to admit, when it gets to some of the racism parts, you know, with white people, Ku Klux Klan, all that stuff, I felt like it wasn't being rushed, but it felt so familiar, like we've seen it so many times before. But the direction, the acting, especially with some of the, well, I'll say it, black actors being treated by the evil white people. I'm evil, but the evil white people. But you know, some of the actors actually portrayed fear and just sadness so good. Like, they were terrified. Like, there's some damn good supporting actors that, like, had no lines whatsoever that did a damn good job here. And I have to admit, that was great, but it definitely did balance it out. You actually got to see a lot of these characters for a good amount of time. There are a ton of presidents in this. I think like 7 or 8, and I think only one doesn't really get that much screen presence at all. But for the most part, everybody else is played by a really big Hollywood actor like Robin Williams or Liv Schreiber, John Cusack, James Marsden. You have a lot of really big actors playing presidents here, and for the most part, oh, and Alan Rickman as Reagan. I have to mention him, but for the most part, they get a lot of they get a good amount of screen time, and you don't feel like they rush too much through that, especially with some of the side characters too, besides, you know, the presidents. Some of the side characters that Cecil Gaines knows himself personally, you get to see a lot of their interaction with Cecil or someone else, and you actually start to get to know them as well. So overall, the characters here are really likable. I really like what they did with the subject matter, even though at times it can get a little familiar and even schmaltzy at times. But for the most part, it's great here. The story is phenomenal, even though I wish it was more about the butler himself. I still really enjoyed it. And the acting, there are so many actors in this film. Let me just say this. The standouts are Forrest Whitaker, Oprah Winfrey, James Marsden as JFK, who did a fantastic job. I was very surprised by that. Alan Rickman as Ronald Reagan, Robin Williams as, I think, Dwight E. Eisenhower, and who else? There was someone else I really liked. Oh, David Oyelowo. I can't say his name, but David Oyelowo, only because he played a 14-year-old perfectly, even though he's like 40 years old, so he did a damn good job with that. And just a lot of really great actors here. John Cusack as Nixon, just really, really amazing actors here, and those are the standouts in my opinion. They have some really good scenes. Perfect. They're great. Oh, and also Cuba Gooding Jr. is actually really good in this film. So you know what? Overall, that's pretty much it. This movie is damn good. Has a lot of emotional moments that will make you tear up. I have to admit. Like I was like forming a little tear there. It went back in. I was like, no, not today, man. Nope, not today. But it was still a very good film. If I had to give it a score, I'd give it a 34 out of a 40. I did have a couple problems, but for the most part, it is a damn good film, and you should go see it because it's really good. So there you go. There's my review for Lee Daniels' The Butler. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and goodbye.